Welcome to Astro Chat with Anne Sundell, Kimberly Williams, and Monica Anna. We are three professional astrologers living in three separate countries, coming together every new and full moon to share our 3 points of view on astrology. Whether you enjoy deep dives into the current transits or you are just beginning to learn about astrology for the first time, there is a place for you here. All that is required is an appreciation for astrology, along with a respect for the various traditions within it. So grab a mug of coffee, your favorite cup of tea, or any other beverage of your choice, and join us for a chat on the astrology of the next 2 weeks. Hi, everybody. Welcome back for another week of Astro Chat. You're joined by myself, Kimberly Williams, and my wonderful, amazing friends and fellow astrologers, Monica Anna and Anne Sundell. Welcome, welcome. So you may already be looking at our screen and noticing some slight differences. My Wi-Fi is down today, so I'm on my phone. I apologize in advance for any sound quality issues, and I have some allergies happening thanks to living in the great state of Texas. It's a constant state of being. I'll try not to sneeze in your ear, but if I do, please forgive me. I don't have as much control on my phone as I do on my laptop. Some other things you may notice in a little bit when we share our charts. Monica has graciously agreed to use her program, which is it Astrogold?
Yes.
Yeah, so the chart may look a little different. And for those of you who've been curious about the difference in Astrogold and Solar Fire, here's a great way to take a peek and see which one that you like better. Before we start, I guess just a real brief check-in on how life is going. Anybody feel like jumping in first? Yeah, okay, I'll jump in. I've got Leo rising in my solar return chart, so I'll embrace that Leo and jump in. Life has been really hectic. The energy of the last 2-3 weeks since our last lunation, and even just before that, hectic would be the word for me of the day for multiple days. I'm really excited about that hectic. There's some new classes that I'm getting ready to teach this fall that are being developed. I have a second job in addition to astrology, and it has been super busy there. And I think it's just that thrill of we're getting ready to enter a new school year. And so August is the time to get all your ducks in a row. And of course, I'm planning that final summer vacation that I probably won't have till September, but I'm planning to go away to the Davis Mountains and do some stargazing. So yeah, there you go. It's busy, 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 but it's all good. How about for y'all?
Yeah, it's busy. I can say the same here. My solar return will be rising Virgo, so I guess that it's going to be a lot about organizing and about work and about duties, and I can feel it already. Then it's really about getting things to work and started. Yeah, so that's what's going on. And of course, when you are living a life with a small infant, your daily rhythm is a bit different. Then you have to adjust to what you want to do. So that's also, of course, affecting. But it's good.
Yeah, and don't you have new classes starting up with the karmic school that you are a founder or a teacher or a part of?
Yes, we have actually, and it's going to be the startup's going to be next week. So, and we have a lot of new pupils. So it's really exciting to see and to be able to be a part of developing the school.
Awesome.
I mean, I agree, and I think we did say that on the podcast as well, that it just feels like the days are getting shorter. And actually, I was reading something the other day that scientists want to drop I think a second from atomic clock, because apparently the Earth is running quicker now. So that was quite funny. I mean, it's not just a second; it just feels like the days just went from 24 hours to like 3 for me. But it's interesting that even scientists notice that Earth literally sped up and is running quicker now.
Wow.
So that was yeah, interesting. Same here. Life's been hectic, but life's been hectic, good and bad. There were things happening just outside of people's control. You know, laptops breaking, access to networks not working, out of the blue phone calls for interviews as well that I got. So yeah, there's been a lot of change happening. So I am looking forward to my summer break in September as well. Looking forward to that. But actually, I wanted to give a shout out to a lovely community built by Dr. Sharon Blackie. She's psychologist, mythologist, and an author. And if you haven't read two of my favorite books are her books. One is If Woman Rose Rooted, and another one is The Enchanted Life. And I'll put the links to the books and the titles in the comments on our YouTube video if you're interested. But Dr. Sharon Blackie has a lovely community that she built on Mighty Networks, and the community is called Mythical Imagination. And last week I actually ran the first archetypal astrology group, and it was so nice just to talk about astrology from that archetypal lens, from that lens of stories, because this is what astrology is for me, very much stories from the stars, and not covering the soul story with the natal chart. So I'm going to be running those classes, or that group every month now, hopefully. And it will be very much exploration of archetypes, very interactive, not a astrology learning group, because that's not the purpose of that community, but exploring stories and archetypes and how they actually manifest through the 12 sign of zodiac. So I'm really looking forward to that. So that's what I wanted to mention.
Awesome. That sounds so exciting.
I am excited about it.
And I have to say, I love that book. If Women Rose Rooted, you had recommended that to me a while back, and I read it, and it is phenomenal. It's really good. I second the recommendation for it.
Yeah.
I have to read
All right,
that
well,
too.
You have to.
Go ahead, hon.
Oh, we were just saying, I think there is a delay on the line, but we were just saying that Anne has to read it too. And there is another book, if we can give another shout out to Dr. Sharon Blackie, there's another book coming out. It's called Hagtitude, from the Hag. And it will be very much about that later stage of life and how we can step in as women into our elderhood and what that means. I've seen a cover. It's a beautiful cover, and I can't wait to read it.
Wonderful. I'll have to add that to my wish list. Sounds great. Love reading about the older woman archetype as the wise crone and the hag, and getting past some of the negative things that our society has tried to get us to believe into.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
All
we
right,
can
well,
talk about this as a separate subject, but yeah, I think we need to jump into our new moon conversation. Kimberly, you'll take it away.
Yeah, that's what I was going at, but I agree. I'm just going to throw out there that there is a delay. I'm sure it's on my end with the technology, so I apologize in advance if I speak over anybody. It's certainly not intentional. Our new moon.
It might be intentional on my part, but that's just me.
Well, when I'm dealing with Scorpio rising individuals, I've learned to develop some tough skin.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's dive in. Virgo energy. I'm so excited. For those of you who don't already know, I got a lot of Virgo in my chart, so I'm always excited every year when we hit the Virgo new moon. And I love new moons. We've talked in past episodes about new moon energy, of this is a time of seeding, of opening up, of embracing and embodying an energy of just being with it before we start taking action when the crescent comes around a few days later. It's very spiritual, it's very depth. And so new moon with Virgo, it's like time to connect and bond and take in that Virgo energy. And to me, the one word that encapsulates Virgo the most is this idea of service. But service is a word that I think has a lot of connotations in our society that don't fit for me. It isn't about being necessarily somebody's servant. It isn't about being somebody's doormat. It isn't about working yourself to the bone, although Virgos, like other earth signs, can certainly do that. It's about how can I be of service, whether I'm being of service to myself, to my community, to my household. There's always this desire to improve life. And this idea of improvement, I think, is so key to the heart of Virgo. How can we make things better? How can we improve? What is it that's not working optimum? Let's break it down. Let's analyze. Let's dissect. Let's, this idea of analysis, of disseminating, of breaking things down to see what works and what doesn't. After all, Virgo is ruled by Mercury. There's a reason that we focus on the details. And I think a lot of this makes Virgos, or people with a lot of Virgo energy in their charts, desirous to be productive. I want you at the end of the day know that I did something good, that I was of service, and that something was accomplished through my actions. And so this idea of being productive is also very important and key. And it's no surprise that most places, the school years begin not in January. School years begin with that September, with that bursting into Virgo of let's be productive, let's get it going, let's see, the proof is in the pudding, are some of the sayings I think of as very Virgoan. And my very first astrology instructor said that to him, Virgo was all about striving to improve quality of life, that was sort of the mission that was motivating all these very Virgoan traits and analysis and details, is how does this improve quality of life for myself or for others? And I've sat with that, and I have to say it's so true, because whenever it's time to make a major change in my world, it's always because this course of action no longer serves quality of life. This action will. And if you think about it, Virgos are always looking to, if they spend money, is it worth it? Is the quality going to be good enough? When we do an action, we are known to be perfectionists, and perhaps I'll go a little overboard with that. But really, it's about, was the effort of high enough quality? Was the result of a high enough quality? So I think this idea of how will I improve my quality of life? And what is it I need to do to bring a new flavor or quality in? Are just some things that are sort of that positive side of Virgo. There's certainly a lot of shadow, as every sign has. And I have no doubt that my fellow astrologers will bring that in. But I kind of just wanted to say, hey, here's a shout out to some of the positive things about Virgo that often get overlooked or forgotten in many of the books. Okay, so I'll get off my Virgo soapbox and let you two talk about your thoughts on this Virgo new moon.
I mean, I love that you brought the new moon. I just wanted to go back to the new moon itself. It's such a phase that is not very well respected or taught in our society. Our society that works 24/7, we are in highly lit up office rooms, in highly lit up cities. We don't teach children, we don't do that as a society. We don't think about the retreat. We don't think about, do you know what, I need to take 2 days for myself, or just go within or reflect. Somewhere we lost that kind of balance between going from the new moon to the full moon and back to the new moon. When I think about our society and our culture that we live in, the Western culture, it's very much being in that full moon spotlight. You want to get to that spotlight, whether it's being influencer on social media or being the best at work. You want to get to that fullness of achievement, of celebrating success. But not many people go, oh, you know what, I really, really fancy going within and reflecting and spending time with myself. That sometimes happens when we are pushed to do that, when we are ill and we have to spend time in bed, because we just worked so hard that suddenly our body crashed and we burned out and we are in bed with a fever, or we actually ended up in hospital because it's something more serious. So it's kind of like when life push us to do that and to do that retreat. So I am with you. I have to say I prefer the energy of the new moon to the full moon, because it's more reflective, because it makes me in touch with me, with my inner self a bit more. It gives me that soothing comfort of I can retreat within the night, but it's the night of thousand dreams. It's that night that is not the scary night. It's that night where I can dream, in those dreams can manifest, if that makes sense. And Virgo, I love how you spoke about Virgo. When I will actually say something positive. I'm not going to go straight into negative. But what I love about Virgo, and when I think about Virgo service, absolutely, I agree with everything you said. And being of service with our gifts, not being in servitude, but actually bringing the gifts and being of service to the world. I think that's the beauty of Virgo. But when I think about Virgo, the word that comes to my mind is that discernment. That what Mercury in Virgo does, and Virgo is an earth sign, Mercury goes, okay, I collected all the data in Gemini, I was very in my mind, I collected all the puzzle pieces and everything, and I have all that ton of information, tons of, people that I know, the network and everything. In Virgo, it's like, what's useful? Like, this is the moment when we actually getting practical and we discern what is useful. If I have a collection of, so many books, are they still useful? If I have so many networks and so many events to go to, what is useful to me? What is contributing to my growth or the growth of my business, or what's actually benefiting? And I love that Virgo brings that energy, because without that energy, we float around, the kind of idea of a social butterfly with Gemini. That's a great energy to meet people, to network, to bring new ideas, new options into your life and create the labels. But if you don't have a Virgo to balance that Mercury in Gemini, then you're just drowning in so many labels and so many boxes and so much information, and oh my God, there's just too much. So Virgo brings that very practical, earthy approach. Okay, what is healthy for me? Again, it's one of those signs that we kind of associate with the overall health. What is healthy for me? What is beneficial for me? What in a practical, earthy way I can put into practice? Well, what's the point of having this amazing knowledge about the stars and the moons if I can't bring it into practice? And I think that's my Virgo midheaven speaking. What's the point of me knowing astrology and all those aspects, and if I cannot bring a practical aspect to the consultation with my client? So this is something that I really, really value. And unfortunately, Virgo does get a bad rap, because who wants to be brought from the stars and the moon and a dreaming into the reality? And the opposition to Virgo is that Pisces, that archetype that we associate with dreams and a vision. And suddenly, when you put those two together, and Virgo's like, well, that's great, but how are we going to do that? What's the plan? Where's the spreadsheet? Suddenly you have that smack of reality, and like, no one really likes that. But it is what's needed. It's absolutely what's needed. And also, this is the last of the signs, like the internal signs before we meet the other in Libra. So it's that sign of taking everything about you from, the moment you're born, the moment you recognize your body, you started creating labels and communicating, to discovering your own gift in Leo. And Libra is this kind of humbling force for Leo energy, saying, that's great, you're awesome, you're amazing, your heart is beautiful, your light is shining, but how can we use that gift and that light and that heart to serve others? And that's the beauty of Virgo. So actually, I'm not going to say anything negative. I'm sure we will get to do the Virgo shadow maybe either later today or at the Virgo full moon or Piscean full moon. But I'll shut up here, because Virgo energy is absolutely needed. Without that balancing force, we would have, our ego blown out of proportion in Leo archetype. So we need that grounding, earthy energy.
Yeah, that was wonderful, wonderful.
I thought you didn't have anything to say because I was all positive and not negative. So I thought you just guys.
Shocked. Yeah,
I'm in shock. Actually. Notice the look of shock on my face.
Yeah.
If you're listening to that on a podcast, you might want to go to a YouTube and see the look of shock on my girlfriend's faces.
Well, I mean, I can provide a bit of shadow because I have Saturn in Virgo also with the midheaven, with the nodes too. But still, when I think of Virgo like the archetype, I think of Virgo is strong. Virgo is a sign that can survive. I think of Virgo as an Amazon warrior, as a person that can take the nature and see the things we can use in nature and be clever about it and put it together and make it work. So I actually see Virgo as one of the very interesting earth signs. Also, sometimes people tell me that, yeah, Virgos also always so nice people. They always help you out with everything. And I used to answer that they're not nice. They just feel obligated because you ask them questions like, could you look this up for me? Do you know something about this? And it makes them feel obligated to do that. Not because they're so kind, but because it's an obligation. Sorry, but this is just how I see it sometimes for Virgos, that they really want to serve, they want to help out so much that they might also burn their candle in both ends. That might be the shadow side of Virgo, that you really want to strive to be perfect. You want to make time to do everything, and it's not possible to always please everybody and to be able to manage everything. So with Virgo also, Mercury ruling the nervous system in health astrology, it's very important also to take the time to rest, to withdraw, to have the peace, to not be too hectic. That might also be something that you're feeling with a new moon in Virgo, that there's a lot of things going on, there's a lot of pressure, you want to complete things, and it needs to be perfect. It needs to be the best, and maybe a bit more better than the best of it. So that is the shadow side I wanted to bring up with Virgo, is that really allow yourself. The demands might be so high that it's hard to really take the time to, for example, just watch some silly movie on the TV and not feel all the time that I need to work or I would need to do something else with my time. So that's one side of Virgo that I experienced personally when I've also been pushing myself too hard in some work situations because of that Virgo energy that really wanna make things perfect. I wanna try to manage everything.
Yeah. And I think this idea of perfect is a good goal, but when we strive to make that the reality, we can get lost in perfectionism. And perfectionism and criticism, I think, are also two very strong shadow sides of that Virgo energy. It's about not knowing when to stop, when to rest, or even when to play, as Anne, you were pointing out too. In the sign prior to Virgo in Leo, we're learning to embrace the energy of play and creativity for the joy it brings. In Virgo, it's easy to forget about the joy. I have several friends who are always like, why is it every time we do something fun, you're trying to convert it into work? This is so much fun. Let's find a way to make this available to everybody and create a new workshop. So Virgo does have a hard time, I think, resting, relaxing, just enjoying being playful, not always having to be productive, and not having to always be perfect. Not everybody, for me, I've realized, not everybody wants to hear how, what is that saying they taught me in school, in grade school? Never stop until you're good is better and your better is best. Not everybody needs to be best. Sometimes good is good enough. And telling people how things could be better really often translates to other people as whereas a Virgo may think they're being super helpful. It can translate to other people as thanks for that criticism that I didn't need. I thought I was pretty good. So learning to have balance, which I think Monica mentioned earlier, which we get in Libra, but learning to embrace that now, having a little balance between the desire to work, to serve, to be productive, to be useful, to focus on improving quality, balancing that with play, rest, self-care is really, I think, key to having healthy Virgo energies in our charts.
I am going to bring the actual chart on the screen for those who actually watch us on the YouTube, and we can dive maybe into the specific aspects of our moon.
And I think you're going to start us off with the square to Mars.
I did, which is actually interesting because Mars is in a sign of Gemini. And that square is the closest aspect in this new moon chart. And it basically, to me, it says that the way we communicate in Gemini can be very aggressive. And the new moon energy, we might not be able to express what we try to express without getting frustrated, without getting angry and feeling that anger, and then using the words, and that can hurt, that can be aggressive, that can be perceived as not so nice. So everything that we've talked about, Virgo, being of service and trying to help others and trying to help out of obligation, all those shadow stuff can actually build up to the point when you just feel so frustrated. Because of what Anne says, because of that obligation, Virgo might not be able to say no to a project, to a suggestion, to a request, and feeling that deep need to be of service, to be helpful, to be useful, might overtake the practical side of it. Well, do I actually have time to help someone? Or if I'm going to take that project or help someone, I don't know, with this shopping, that means that then I'm running late and I can't do my dinner, and then I getting frustrated, and then I just blow up. And that might be the energy that this new moon brings. So I would say, let's use the discernment and actually disseminate, like Kimberly used that word, anything, any request that comes our way, any project that comes our way, anything that we've been asked to do, and say, okay, do I have time for that? If I say, because something actually someone said to me a long time ago, and I love that, and that actually fits Virgo very well. And the question goes, if you say yes to someone, if you say yes to a project, if you say yes to an adventure, are you at the same time saying no to yourself? And that question changed a lot for me, because we very often say, oh yeah, sure, I do that. Yes, no problem. I'll go with you. Yeah, I'll be there. And we say yes to other people's needs and their expectations, and we commit to that. And then by default, we say no to ourselves. So yeah, I'll go with you and help you that evening means no to my self-care in, evening. Or yes, going to that weekend with someone, help them with something else, might mean no to my weekend with my partner and actually bonding with my partner or my children. So discernment is needed. Sometimes we have to say no to ourselves. Absolutely. We need to put our selfish needs on hold because someone might need our help. But how much of that is because it's actually emergency and we really need to put our needs on hold and help that person? And how much is that of our obligation? We feel obliged to help and put ourselves on the back burner. Another thing with Virgo is that inner criticism, an inner critic telling us, well, you're not worth that bubble bath. You need to go and help that person. I don't know, put up boxes or put up the shelves or something. Instead of saying, do you know what? I really can't do that tonight because I need to take time for myself, but I'm happy to help you out tomorrow. So Mars in Gemini in that square it tells me that there might be that kind of buildup of frustration. I had a tough week. I had a date with myself. I was really looking forward to having a bubble bath, relaxing my body, sitting in meditation and doing some self-care. And then I said yes to this person or this project or this event. Why the hell did I do that? That inner critic will then be in your ear telling you what a stupid idea was that, and why did you do that to yourself? And that buildup of frustration, of anger will be there and will blow up. And I think that is something to look out for, not just around that new moon, but the aspects that we look at the new moon are creating the theme and the underlying story for the whole lunar month. So the way I look at the new moon is, yes, this is the aspect that's happening on the day. And as you can see on the YouTube screen, if you're looking at it, Mars is at 4 degree, Gemini, Sun and Moon is at 4 degree, Virgo, so that is super close aspect. And this is an aspect that happens on the day of the new moon. But this is the theme. This is the beginning of the lunar month. And the themes that we're talking around the new moon, they set the story for the first quarter and the full moon and the last quarter and the whole month. So I would expect that frustration will be building up, and Mercury, that rules both Virgo and Gemini, will be going into retrograde, which we'll mention later. So that will add yet another layer. So I think there is something about using that discernment that we mentioned about Virgo to be more aware of what we're saying yes and what we're saying no to, and balance those two and make those choices more practical and more healthy.
Absolutely. And with that air energy also, and with 2 signs that are ruled by Mercury, maybe also Mars in Gemini could be a good energy to multitask, and maybe not so easy to concentrate on one thing for a long time, to be able to find another solution for if you find that it's hard to be able to do the long range plan, that you can go from one thing to another and multitask, like both of those signs are quite good at.
Yeah. I also think that I echo what you were saying, Monika, about we'll feel this energy throughout the month, throughout the lunar month. Not only does that new moon set the tone, but the sun doesn't move that quickly. It's moving a degree a day. So it'll combust planets up to 18 degrees away. So you're going to see that this tension between Mars and the sun continues for quite some time. So it's definitely there. I think when Mars is in Gemini, one of the challenges we face is needing to overthink our actions before we take action, or talk them out. We need the soundboard. And so there's lots of thinking about what I want to do, as opposed to that Mars energy that says, let's just do it now. Think about it later. And that can in itself create tension. When you add this to it squaring all that Virgo, well, Virgo is a sign that's very encapsulated. She can be very solitary. It's like Virgo sees something that needs to happen. She's just going to do it in kind of a humble behind the scenes way, but not necessarily express it or talk about it. So when I see this, I think some of the challenge may be asking for what I need. Could be a real big thing. Yes, I'm resentful because I keep saying yes. As both of you mentioned earlier, I'm trying to be of service. I feel an obligation. I'm saying yes, I didn't want to. There's a buildup of resentment. And certainly it can come out while Mars is in Gemini, in not the most eloquent of language, perhaps. But there's also that not recognizing for oneself what's needed. Sometimes we don't recognize that I'm telling myself no until very late. And I'm speaking from such experience this past week right now about this, that, we say yes, and then we pay the price, and then we realize. And so there can be this, I need to take away a day off. I do need to embrace this new moon. I'm just going to check out, but I forgot to tell my family that I won't be around. And now I feel put upon because they've made plans for me. But did we articulate what was happening in our mind? With all this mercurial energy of the 2 signs it's ruling, making these tough squares, and then Mercury going retrograde that we'll talk about later on, but later in the month, it just seems to me that it's going to be real easy to have conversations in our head that we have strong emotional responses to, but not always having them out loud until we're bursting. So recognizing that whatever it is we're thinking about, how we communicated that, asking for what I need, or simply informing people of what I need or what I'm planning to do, and maybe then giving ourselves that permission to just do it rather than the hemming and hawing and thinking about it, can be really useful, because I think there's going to be a whole lot of inner self-talk that's not so positive around this square happening during the same month of the retrograde.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then we have this T-square or grand cross actually on the chart. If you take the nodes, calculate the nodes also, then it's going to be grand cross, where we find Saturn and we find Venus, Ceres, and we find the North Node, South Node, and also Uranus. So we have fixed signs, big cross, and this is tension that needs to be resolved. And usually, when it's in fixed signs, we are more reluctant to finding these solutions for the T-squares and the crosses. We are stubborn, we want to have our way, and we are not that flexible with finding the solutions. When I think of the Virgo energy and the Mars energy that you both described very well, then I'm happy also to see that we have Mercury in Libra and we have Venus in Leo, so we're getting a different vibe from them. But still, it might be quite hard to allow yourself to, or nurture yourself with some luxury or maybe some weekend off when Saturn is opposing Venus and is all the time embracing and in a dialogue of you need to do something else, you need to work, you can't put this on this much money on yourself, or it's not the time to take a day off. So here we might be caught up in a bit of a tension between these. And Saturn and Uranus has been in this square on and off now for the last 3 years. So we're having to work with, and especially for people with planets at 20 degrees in fixed signs, this might be a feeling of being stuck. It's hard to find a good solution, and you always need to the solution includes that you need to cut back on something that you wouldn't like to. I don't know how you feel about this grand square.
I feel like we should do rocks, paper, scissors.
Okay.
Who goes first? Do you want to go first, Monika, or do you want me to?
I can go.
Oh.
I'm glad you brought the Mercury, and I'm sure we'll go into the retrograde in a minute. Kimberly will take us there. Mercury in Libra, and thanks for mentioning that. Mercury is ruled by that Venus that is part of this tense cross in the sky. And what Kimberly said about ask for what you need, make sure that you communicate to people what you need and how you want to have your need met. I think there might be something to do with, I don't want to hurt someone's feelings. The Mercury in Libra can be very much of the mediator. So maybe that kind of, again, that tension might be building up, because instead of speaking plainly, this is what I need an evening off. Please don't feel offended, but I need an evening off for myself, and then I can be with you or help you or whatever the next day or something. Instead of being that assertive, we might have that tension or that pull into, I want to be a mediator. I want to make sure that there is a harmony, Mercury in Libra, that there is a harmony, that there's beauty, that everyone is happy around me, and we can get into that trap of communicating what we think other might want to hear and not what you want to really say. So again, that Mars in Gemini, I always think about Gemini as presenting us with two paths. There is something about that duality of, you know, internal and external, about two different paths to choose, about two different jobs. You know, Gemini symbol is very much wearing those two hats, and having the twin, the Gemini twin as a symbol. There is something to it. So which way will you go over the next month? Will you go the route of, I'm going to keep everyone happy and I'm going to mediate and I'm going to say things that I know other people want to hear or need to hear while the tension's building up in me? Or are you going to go the routes and actually communicate what needs to be communicated, and hopefully in a beautiful and gentle manner using that Venus energy, but communicating it, your boundaries, Mars, you know, boundaries, and being assertive in your communication. So I think, you know, with that Mars and Mercury, we have that option, and which way will you align is up to you. With Venus opposing that Saturn, again, at the new moon, there is that layer of restriction. So yes, it's Venus in Leo. We might want to go and change our hairdo and spend money on the new clothes, or, you know, buy these amazing holidays. And then Saturn will go and say, well, do you actually need that? Do you have funds for that? Is it wise to do it? It's not necessarily Saturn. And I think if you listen to a few of our podcasts already, you know, I'm a huge fan of Saturn. Saturn is not necessarily this mean person that says no. It's again that reality check. Well, that's awesome that you want to go and buy some nice clothes that will make you feel maybe more confident at work, that will make you feel, you know, a bit better about yourself. You know, we all know that how we look actually has an impact on our well-being, on you know, on how we perceive ourselves. That can be all very positive. But if you're spending 90% of your salary on that, and then you have no money to pay your rent, well, that's when Saturn comes in with the reality check. So that Venus in Leo might desire, you know, all those Leonian stuff. And Saturn will go, have you checked your bills? Do you know what you want? Do you know, do you have actually resource to do that? It's squaring planets in Taurus. Do you have resource to do that? Or is your desire actually hurting the resources around you? In so many ways, it doesn't have to be salary. Is your choice, Venus, is your choice, is your desire hurting the land, you know, hurting the resources that needs to be used to create the things that you want to use, buy, or service. So there is a little bit of tension in that new moon. And we were saying in the previous episode that we are going into a 6 months, or the next 5-6 months of interesting and challenging transits. And this new moon starts us off very much with a question: how do we balance the need to serve others, to be of service, and bringing our gifts, with that discernment of how do I communicate my boundaries and what I really need, instead of building the tension and feeling like a victim because people take advantage of me, or blowing up and feeling horrible for hurting people that really did just mean well.
I really like this. As much as it's tension, I like this because for so long now, we've been dealing with the T-square between Uranus and the North Node in Taurus, the South Node in Scorpio, and Saturn moving through Aquarius. And between the different retrogrades and stuff, we've been hitting, where they're bumping up and they're bumping up. And we keep seeing this T-square of this really intense work. And to me, a T-square is like a 3-legged table. It's not as solid as a 4-legged. How's that for a good Virgo practical analogy? So here we've got this Leo energy coming in. So really, it is a T-square by planets, but if we bring in the nodes, you could say it's acting like a grand cross. And so now there's some solidity, and we're bringing the Leo in to balance things out. And if you think back to what was happening in your world a month ago, when we had the new moon in Leo, right? We were dealing with similar energies, but it was much more internal. It was new moon. It was, I'm taking it in, I'm connecting. Maybe we were desiring to get that haircut or that, indulge in some kind of play. Now we've got Venus here, and the asteroid Ceres is right there with her. So making time to play, to be creative, to connect with the people who are your tribe, not about the work we need to do together, but that feeling of connection. I think it's going to be nurturing, and it can bring in energy that makes it a little more bearable to get through the tension of this T square, which for me, everything that's been hitting the nodes this year, the eclipses and these transits, it's really about how can I let go of the Scorpio South Node energies, not all of them, but those energies that stop me from being myself. What is the fear that I need to move past, beyond, through? And so, is there a fear about making it about myself, about asking for what I need, about all these things? And with that Mercury being in Libra, I feel like this is another layer of don't overthink. Let's get out of the conversations in our head, because um, thinking in a vacuum, I had a friend that used to say, thinking in a vacuum is a very dangerous place to be. I don't know what somebody else is thinking. I don't have that kind of psychic skill. I don't know where they're coming from, their motivation. I don't know how much. So if we're thinking that this is what somebody wants from us or what they mean, we can create all kinds of story that aren't the truth. And by the same token, if I'm overthinking what I just did or I shouldn't have done or how people will see it, and we can fall so easily into that Virgoan self-criticism vibe. So I think it's really important to have externalization of conversations that are needed, and not to overtalk or overthink, but also make time to just do things that bring us joy. If there isn't some joy in our world, then that might be why all of this is so tense. So where do you need to go to get in touch with that Leo heart space and find some joy, some beauty? It might be just taking a day to go to the museum. It might be being with a person. Everyone's going to define that for themselves. But I think this is a way of saying the work isn't going to ease up anytime soon. Right? The work, that the transition we started 2 years ago is here to stay, but that doesn't mean it has to all be drudgery. It can also be balanced with what is it that fills your heart so that you are recharged. Fill yourself up, make sure that pitcher is full of water before you start pouring out to others. So I think a message here is about taking time to recharge, in however that looks for you.
I love that you're bringing, and I have a little very simple example of that. So everything that you just said about taking time of recharging and looking at that Leo self, and with that opposition to Saturn can bring restrictions or change of plans, or like you say, it can bring the fear. But I have a funny story. I actually planned a spa day. I really need it after all those hectic, that we were saying at the beginning, all those hectic weeks and plans changing and things coming out of the blue, and long hours. I just decided what I really need for myself, Venus in Leo, I just want a day in spa, a nice massage, nice swimming pool, and just spend the day just being pampered. How Venus in Leo. And I planned that with my husband. Guess what? His work took over. There is a very Saturnian responsibility on his shoulder that he needs to meet, and he's not able to go with me. So the question was, am I still going and treating myself, or am I, siding with that Saturnian side and that disappointment? And this is kind of what I mean with Saturn. Saturn doesn't necessarily bring disappointment, but how do we meet maturation and responsibility that sometimes comes in and spoils our fun times? So my husband needs to meet that expectation at work. So he can't go with me. I actually texted my girlfriend by accident. She will be in my town and she'd love to come with me. So now I'm having a girly spa weekend. So I thought that was a really fun example of that Venus coming up to opposition with Saturn. How do I have that fun and also understand that Saturn brings responsibility and brings accountability, and we need to meet that as well. So yeah, just bringing that to actually show on an actual example how those archetypes and forces can manifest, even if it's in a small way.
I think that's beautiful. And I love the fact that, you know, it was with one of your girlfriends that you're actually going to be. How Venusian is
Yeah,
that? It's like, you know,
I know.
the astrology at work. That's great. Yes, so true. I'm going to chime in with something Anne mentioned earlier before we started recording. And that's that this chart is so balanced. You know, we've all been talking about using this word balance, which is much more of a Libra tone, but it's interesting that even by polarity, right? We've been dealing for months now where everything's in the receptive elements, signs of receptive elements, or it's been in the active elements, but like we actually have both here, right? We have things more or less spread out between those four. Um, and I don't know if you had more to say about that than that, because I'm kind of just throwing it out there, but I just thought that was really an interesting observation.
Yeah, I thought it would add some of the possibility to feel this energy more more harmonically than it's been, and also to see different, like opening up of different scenarios or different ways of working with those energies. And like Monika just said, with Venus also in connection with Uranus, you did a rearrangement of plans that also and went with that very Uranian vibe, and it worked out. So this is also a way to work with those Saturn, Venus, Uranian energies. And also at the same time, and I was looking at that we have a lot of different 50-50 with feminine and masculine planets in signs too. Then also that we are having a lot of retrograde planets, and more planets are going into retrograde, which might actually also give us a bit more time to go inward, and not maybe that hectic pace, that possibility to a bit rewind, to a bit slow down. And with, especially with Uranian energy, I've seen that it might really change the rhythm, the daily rhythm, the rhythm of life, the rhythm on the projects and plans we have when it's going into retrograde phase. In karmic astrology, retrograde Uranian energy is a lot associated with rebellion, with the need for freedom, the need for to speak up, to be accepted for a different view of the world, or for example, have also a different way of a different lifestyle or different way of living. Or for example, retrograde Uranian people might also be people that really want to have a known company or a work where they can choose the rhythm for themselves. They are not that good at being on somebody else's authority. Issues might be a problem, or they need to have a place where they can use their own inspiration, intuitive energy, and that might work better if they can put their own hours, for example. So this is something that we also work with in the karmic astrology, as I call it, where we work with the retrograde planets in the natal chart. But this phase of these many planets being in retrograde, same time it might maybe slow down the pace a bit, that we have more possibility to rewind things and go into them on a deeper level.
Yeah, and we have Jupiter, Saturn. On the 25th, we're going to have, okay, I can hear myself echoing.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. So we have Jupiter, Saturn. On the 25th, we'll have Uranus go retrograde, and then we have Neptune and Pluto all retrograde this month and next month, and into a little bit into October. So it's a lot of, like you said, slowing down and internal energy. And I also think that when you have an outer planet retrograde, if you're working with transits to your natal, that's so impactful, because so the planets move so slow. And then when they retrograde, they're going to stay there for so long. We're not like, if we just follow Uranus, it hasn't moved very many degrees in Taurus since, because of its retrograde. This energy of being retrograde for 4 to 6 months out of the year just slows it down and has such a hit on the planets in our chart. So if you've got a planet close to 18 degrees of Taurus, where it's going to retrograde this time around, that's making a square, that's part of a multiple conjunction, that's part of a stellium, the energy doesn't really let up. It keeps hitting that and hitting that and hitting that. And it can be so profound. I find that a lot of times this is timing of profound changes and shifts that we're going through. And so with Uranus, it can be very, the unexpected. And as Anne was mentioning, all these karmic themes with it. I think it'll be really interesting at the end of the year to reflect back on what we all got as a result of this Uranus transit retrograde while doing multiple squares.
If you have your chart and you know your chart, you can look up any planets that you might have in Aquarius, Taurus, Leo, or Scorpio around 14 to 18 degrees, maybe give a bit more, another degree on each side, so 13 to 19 degrees. Those will be the planets that will be really affected. So if you have a planet or a point around those degrees in those zodiacs, then Uranus retrograde will say hello to them, will trigger them, will awaken them, and it would be interesting to see how they light up in your chart and in your life, and what that unexpected Uranian change will awaken.
Definitely. And before we wrap up, let's not forget to talk about the exciting upcoming Mercury retrograde. We've already talked about Mercury a little being in Libra, but
yay!
We saw that it went into Libra. I think it was the 26th, the 25th, the 26th of this month. It had already been in its pre-shadow. So what we mean by that is it will go retrograde on September 10th at our next lunation, right on the full moon. And it retrogrades back into Virgo. I think it's going to go from 24 up to 24 degrees Virgo. So if you have planets that are those last few degrees of Virgo, the first 10 to 15 degrees there of Libra, you're probably going to feel this even more intensely than the rest of us. But when Mercury goes retrograde, and we talk about it a lot in astrology, partly because it's become part of mainstream, pop astrology, but also because as astrologers, it happens so darn often. It's 3 and sometimes 4 times a year that Mercury goes retrograde, and Mercury rules aspects of our everyday life that are much more common now that we live in this technology age, right? Mercury rules money and commerce and technology and computers and the phones, and the list goes on and on. Our cars, how we get from point A to point B, these everyday aspects of everyday life about the comings and goings and interconnections. And now it's going to be in Libra about others. And I think this means that there's a lot of our conscious thought, our conscious mind being put into, when do I connect with others and when don't I? What do others expect of me and what don't they? And so a lot of, I'm trying to think of a term, a lot of mental energy into what others want, expect, need. And some of this can be great energy because we might just be more aware, right? It can pull us a little out of our self. By the same token, it can also put us a little more into that inner headspace, which can lead to anxiety, which can exacerbate stress, which combined with everything else we've discussed this last hour or so, can really amp things up in terms of what's happening in our mind and our own expectations about things. One of the shadowy, I love Libra. It's gracious. It cares about others. Having Mercury in Libra, even while retrograde, may help us soften our words that want to come out from that Mars and Gemini that we already talked about, right? These can balance each other a bit, which is lovely. But by the same token, we can overfocus. We can overthink what others need and forget to think about, what do I need? So all that conversation we had earlier about there's already tension from this T square or grand cross energy where I might not be thinking about what I need. Here we see another layer of that kind of being exacerbated again of I'm so concerned with what others want, need, what they said. We may overhash or overanalyze. So while Mercury is retrograde, there's a tendency to go within and internalize. So this is why I think I'm focusing on I keep getting redundant with this word rehash, because that's what I think is happening. A lot of rethinking. And it's not always just about what's happening now. While Mercury is retrograde or about to go or just coming out, those pre and post shadows, there's often a tendency to review. So we may be reviewing the relationships in our life. We may be reviewing old relationships, replaying some old drama from years ago that's not really pertinent to now, but yet now's the time we're going to process. Because maybe there's something to learn that's pertinent to now, or maybe there's some projection of somebody today is acting like that person from yesterday. So I think, again, it's important that we recognize a lot of our mental space is going to be taken up with sort of this automatic, maybe it's conscious, maybe it's unconscious, but like this automatic replaying and rehashing and rethinking and reevaluating, right? It's a great time for journaling. It's a great time for, I think, writing letters, something very old fashioned that we don't do in this age of technology. And I think that can be a useful way of kind of reaching out and connecting with people, but also being aware that we might be overthinking or overplaying or overassessing. What do you guys think about how you are planning to work with the Mercury retrograde in Libra?
So can you just remind me and the listeners, when does the shadow part start? What's the date for the shadow?
We're already in it. It started back on August 21st, I believe it was, when it got to 24 degrees of Virgo.
So two things about the retrograde. I like looking at the shadow phase, because this is the phase from the 21st of August all the way until the 9th, 10th of September, depending where you are in a planet. That's the path that the Mercury is covering at the moment going forward, that it will revisit when it will go retrograde. So it's actually, we all pay attention the moment something happened, the moment Mercury goes retrograde, the moment our car breaks down, and our laptops breaks down or something else. Those are the kind of typical Mercury retro stories. But actually, if we were to be aware, if we were to be mindful, we would probably notice in that shadow phase, pre-retrograde phase, that our laptop was begging us to back up data and maybe clean up a bit, or the car needed to have the oil check or the MOT done or some service done. So this is the thing, that if we were to pay attention before Mercury goes retrograde, we can actually already see the themes emerging that we might have to revisit. So you're driving in your car's, pulling to the left side. Okay, this is the time, you know what? I might have to go and proactively go and revisit that and book a service and double check. And not all the Mercury retrograde stories have to be horrible, missing your flight, being grounded for 3 days, breaking your leg and all that. Not all of them are horrible. But what the planets in retrograde do, they're trying to pull you back. They're trying to go and make you pay attention. Otherwise, we're just going way too fast. So I think that's one thing. Just pay attention to what's happening now until the 10th of September. And I'm sure we will be talking a lot more about Mercury when we'll be recording our full moon podcast. So I don't want to talk about everything. But one thing I'll say as well about Mercury retro in Libra, this is a retrograde within the archetype of relationship and of being of service. So again, the themes of this new moon that we're talking, and why we're already talking about the retrograde, is those themes will be there throughout the month, and it will be highlighted again at the full moon. Mercury is ruling this new moon in Virgo, because Mercury is the ruler of Virgo, and it's a ruler of Gemini, the sign that Mars is currently. So we already have Mercury making a stamp, around that new moon. And then shortly after, at the full moon, it will go into retrograde. So the relationships and how we communicate in relationships, maybe reaching out to people from the past or people from the past in retrograde. I honestly, Mercury retrograde in Libra or Venus retrograde, it's always bringing up in my life people from the past, without fail, someone that I haven't spoken for months or sometimes for years, dropping me an email, connecting on the Facebook, connecting on LinkedIn. It's incredible how that past is coming up and catching up with you. But I personally think it's always, my question is always, what is that trying to show me, trying to teach me? Libra and Virgo, that balance of those relationships, because Mercury will go all the way to Libra to the 8th degree, and then will go all the way back into Virgo, into the 24th degree, and then go forward again. It brings up the themes of relationships. How are we of service in those relationships? Are we of service with our gifts and talents, or are we in servitude to relationships? Something that we've been talking about, throughout this podcast. What is the difference? Use that Mercury discernment, that mental qualities that you have to see, am I in service or am I, in servitude? That's a completely different energy, and that's something that you can discern for yourself.
Well put. Anne, any final thoughts about Mercury before we move into our tips?
There's a lot of thoughts on Mercury in Libra, but I think we will cover that more in the next podcast. So I leave it to that.
All right. Then let's move into our final parting tips and tricks. Getting a little, as Monika likes to say, get very practical, right? And put our astrology into reality.
Yeah. So I can start, because I will tie my tip to what I just said about those relationships. I think, going back to the question that I asked earlier, if you're saying yes to someone or something, are you saying no to yourself? And can you be okay with that on a practical, healthy way? So if you're saying yes to a project or to a person, and that means saying no to your own needs, is that a healthy balance? Is that practical balance? Can you discern between those two and make that decision a bit healthier, a bit more balanced? I think that will be something that you can use as a mantra throughout this month, not just at the new moon, but throughout this month. Put it on a yellow sticker on your laptop, or in a room where you are, in a kitchen or in a living room, and just say to yourself, if I'm saying yes to a plan, to an event, to a person, am I saying no to myself? And is that okay with me, or is that actually hurting me? That's my tip for the month.
Because Virgos want to be in control, and they wanna know what's going on and going very practical, then I would go to the calendar, and I would look at me time in the calendar, and I would take a pen and schedule me time and check that you have enough me time in your own calendar, really in a practical sense. And when you put it there, you have to follow it after that.
That's a great advice. That's such a great advice.
I would do it
I'm
myself.
going to do that.
Yeah.
That is fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going back to this idea of it's a new moon. It is a time for me, a new moon is somewhere during those 3 days of the new moon. Schedule some time to be by yourself in a way that feels good, whether that's sitting out under the moon and the stars, or taking a bubble bath, or curling up, with your favorite book. And during that time, take 5 minutes to think about one thing you can do, you can take action on, that will improve your quality of life. It may not change our life. It may not eradicate everything, but for that one moment, that one thing can improve our quality of life, and do it. And if it's hard to think about one thing, then with all of this tension, maybe do the opposite for a second. What is the one thing that you feel is holding you back? And what is one thing you can do to make a dent, to make a difference there, and do it. So if, you know, it's like I need to redo the office, but the project is so large. I find that with all of this T-square, everyone's talking about everything feels so large and so complicated, and there's so many steps. And if I can't do it all, I'm not sure I'm going to do it. Okay, what's one thing you can do? Maybe that one thing is taking a day off. Maybe that one thing is just tackling one corner, you know, or as I think Marie Kondo says, 10 minutes a day, every day. Like, just think about one thing you can do that improves your quality of life, because just thinking about what improves my quality of life is worth that 5 minutes. And you may even go longer if we're lucky. So hopefully under the energies of this Virgo new moon, you'll tap into something that feels more like a breakthrough and can help you feel empowered to move forward.
I have to say at the end that I love Marie Kondo and the whole idea of what sparks joy and how to declutter. The one thing that I really, really disagree with her, I think her idea is that you shouldn't have more than 5 books in a house.
Oh yeah, no.
And I'm
can't
thinking
go
I
with
don't need that negativity. I don't
No.
need that negativity.
Yeah, I totally selectively choose the theories that work and don't work for me from her material, because no. Yeah, a room of books, everyone should have a library in their home.
I agreed.
I don't think
Cannot
it
agree
works,
more.
but with astrologers not have books. I don't think that's a good combination at all.
Yes. But I've heard other people who are in the Feng Shui community say if it sparks joy, then it's not clutter and you can have it. So quite frankly, my books bring me joy, so I'm okay.
Oh God, yeah.
All right. Before we go off onto non-astrology tangents, let's just go ahead and sign off and thank everyone for taking the time to be with us once again, and see you all in 2 weeks before the September 10th full moon in Pisces.
Thank you, guys.